I'm going to start recording, and what I was going to go over, I wanted to go over SELinux, Security Enhanced Linux. So I'd like for us to go putty into our Linux machine and maybe even bring up WinSCP. Let's do both. We'll need to run putty and access your Azure. Also launch WinSCP. Should be installed on all of y'all's computer. You can use WinSCP to put your host name in from Azure. You can put student in. You don't have to worry about the password. Password should be blank, but so you put your host name in. I actually like the SCP protocol better than, they're both basically the same thing. FTP or SCP, Secure Copy Shell. I don't know if there's really much difference in the two, but I like to use the SCP protocol. You put your host name, preferably in there, IP address, preferably host name. Put in the user that you have to log into your Linux machine as. I think somebody's Azure user or something, but and you'd have to go under advanced, and under advanced you would have to do the same authentication and add in the key file, the same key file that you have to use with putty to log in. This is multi-factor authentication. It requires the key file and your password to the key file to get into the system. So again, that was under the advanced button of the WinSCP, where you can go to find SSH authentication, very similar to the way putty's dialog box is laid out under advanced. And then just go ahead and log in. It'll ask you for your passphrase. That dialog box where it had the password field, that's only if you were using password authentication. So it doesn't matter what you type there, it won't use it, because it'll detect that you're using certificate authentication, and it'll always prompt you for the certificate password, so it will not save that information. Once you log in with WinSCP, it'll show you the files on your local system on the left side, and it will show you your home folder of your student account on the right side. I want you to find a file, preferably like a picture, and drag a picture over to your home folder. There's a picture here called DNS. I'm going to drag it over and drop it. I'm going to pause recording while y'all are getting logged in and getting a file pulled over. Make sure it's kind of a short file name because we're going to be accessing this file. And preferably it's a picture or a text file or an HTML file. Don't try to do an exe or anything different. So a graphic file, a text file, or an HTML file from your computer over into the student's home folder. Okay, so I'm going to resume recording. I've got everybody logged in. I think most everybody's got a file moved from their local machine over to the remote machine. So now I'm going to leave one SCP open in case we need to use it again, but I'm going to minimize it on my screen. And I'm just going to go right in here into PuTTY. I've logged in as student. And I am going to sudo over into root. I'm just going to type sudo-i. That'll make me root. You can also do sudo space su space minus. We'll do the similar. And that's where we should be at now. We should have PuTTY open, and we should be at a root login with a pound. And I was just curious what directory I'm in. I am in the root directory, so exactly where I need to be. Root home folder anyway. Going to remute Bethany there. So letting everybody get caught up. I see a lot of PuTTY screens up. Yeah, I'm not running a new key thing, but it's not generating for that computer. It has to be replacing the one. And probably would need possibly open up the Azure Cloud Shell, Bash Shell, and create a new key that way, and then copy and paste it in. It's kind of a complicated process to do that route. Yeah, it could be replaced, but a lot easier if you keep that key in your OneDrive or a Google Drive or a OneDrive or a thumb drive. Okay, so yes.
Well, just a quick question for the WinSCP. You only need to move one document, don't you? Or do you need to move all of them that show?
Just one document.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm in PuTTY. What I'm going to do, I'm going to change into the folder where my root web server is located. Hopefully you remember that we had to go into the root web link to edit the index.html file and make some changes. What I'm going to do, I'm going to first change directory and do a whack user usr share. Why is that not wanting to go? Why is tab complete not working? Because I need to get to Linux, not Windows. Playing with PowerShell earlier. That's what the problem was. Okay, I get my my slashes right, forward slashes here. CD change user share nginx HTML. And that is the directory that was in the documentation of the nginx website of where the root folder would default installed to. You went to that folder to change your index.html file. I'll do an ls in this directory, I'll see all of my files out there. Cool, right? Okay, now here's the test we're going to be doing. We're going to move a file from our home folder into this folder. Not copy it, but we're going to move. So with the MV command, you'll type that in. You'll put /home. You'll put your user account name or the first letter and use tab. Make sure you tab completed just to make sure your upper lowercase is not being an issue. And then put the first letter of the file that you moved from your WinSCP. Well, let's see, I use DNS for mine. So I just put a letter D in its tab and it will complete the file name for me. So whatever file that you copied up, use that file. And then I'll put a period and hit enter. It puts it into that folder. On top ls again, and I'll notice that my dns.png is in that folder. It's not colored correctly because the uppercase file extension, it only colorizes it if everything's lowercase, but that's beside the point. It's in there. And the color is only the reason because the file extension's in uppercase. Probably a Windows thing. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to launch a web browser and I'm going to try to access that file. And I'm going to close down all of these links here. I'm going to go to my website. Unlike you, I've not gone to my portal and copied this domain name. I'm going to go to my website, just paste it in there, and you should be able to find your homepage.
Mr. Goodman, I don't know what happened to it with my WinSCP.
The what now?
I tried copying or delete. I moved in more than one document, and then I tried getting rid of it, but then I did this that I'm on. Okay, never mind. It's right there.
You just need to minimize WinSCP. You don't worry about deleting anything. Just go over to PuTTY and
For some reason, it says it's missing.
so you're moving password. Well, you need to have a space between the dot and the txt.
Okay.
There you go.
All right. Well, that's it then. Thank you.
Okay, now I want you to notice something here. I can access any of the files from my web browser. Like if I wanted to see Halloween only. Oops. Whoops. There we go. I could look at Halloween only and it would pop up. So I can access any file that I can see inside the HTML file by putting a slash in the name of the file. It's case sensitive, most likely. If I try to tap a lowercase h here, I'm going to show you that it should fail. Yeah, the page you're looking for is not there. So I moved the DNS.png, my file over there. I'm going to try to access it and see what I get. DNS.png. I'm going to hit enter, and I get a 403 forbidden. It actually detected the file existed. I typed the file name correctly, and I got a little bit different error message this time. I got a forbidden. If I type in anything that doesn't actually exist, like what.jpg, that doesn't exist in that folder, I get this error message telling me that I don't know what I'm doing. I typed something wrong. But if I type something that exists, I want you to be getting the 403 forbidden error on your screen. And why are we getting this? Why are we forbidden access to that file? I'm going to resume recording. And we're back from break. I think everybody's got a 403 forbidden error. We're not able to access that file. Well, let's go in and look at this file. Let's do an ls-l. And that is a very common that you did in your operating systems class. We're looking at the permissions on this. We noticed that it's read for the user, read for the group, and read for other people on the system. However, we do notice something up there that the user student has rights to it instead of root. Maybe that's the issue, but I have another file down here already, Smith, with the same read write, read read permission, the same 644 permission. You want to call it that. That's the numeric for that. Read write, read read is 644. Can I access Smith on mine? I'm just showing you this example. Let's see what happens when I type in smith.png. That must have been another example. So yeah, Smith's not working either. Okay, so access forbidden. Well, maybe what would be your first thought to fix right here? What's different about the dns.png file from all the others? The owner and
color.
Group, yeah, those are only really things different because I can get to the engine logo that's read write, read read, these 403, 404 messages, stuff like that. Those still work. So the only really thing I see right now is that. So I'll do a change owner, root colon, the DNS PNG. I could have done root colon root, but that's just more typing and it'll auto, if I put a colon there, it'll auto do root root. So change owner, chown, root colon, file name. You can do another ls-l and see how that changed. After you change the owner. Of course, it won't be dns.png on you. It'll be your file that you moved over there. Okay, if I look at it again, what happened to my DNS? It is root root. Cool. If I reload it, it's still forbidden. And if you want to just be extra sure that it's not a permission issue, can you get to 404.html? Yeah, it's going to be that engine error page. So you know that all the permissions on the 404 to 50x and the PNG, everything's the same. And I'm still forbidden rights to it. So what's an admin or a low IT person might do? Quit. Good one. They might try to put like 777 on there. Give it all permissions. That wouldn't do anything. Make it executable. Make the graphics file an executable program. Like, that's not cool at all. So what is going on with this? That is a new set of permissions here. I'm going to clear my screen up and I'm going to type in ls-Z. going to make my screen as wide as possible, and I'm going to redo that command. Just because it'll look better up and down. There's a new column here. It replaced the size with a context, an SELinux context column. What do you see different about your file that you copied over from the 401, 40x or 50x files? You see undefined or unconfined. You also see objects is the same, but the really key part that's, you don't know this right now, but there's 1, 2, 3, 4 different fields in here. And I've not greatly studied each field exactly what they mean. But I know the third field in the list, the one where it says HTTPD, sys content, and that is on the 404, and the DNS or your file you copied over, the third one is probably user_home_t. That's the field that's blocking it. So this third field is what's blocking. Typically though, when I see this, I don't just modify that one, I modify the whole string. So I know the 404 here is working. How I fix the file that I moved into the folder is I select the context of a file that works. That copies it into the mouse buffer. I don't have to hit Control-C or right-click or anything like that. I just highlight it. And I can change the context. Look at my Halloween file down there. You see my Halloween, it's still unconfined, but notice the third octet right there is HTTPD sys content. I can access it because that third field, but not the others. So this is context. To change it, use chcon. And let me bring up the help on that. So you do chcon, you do the context, and you do the file. Okay, that's pretty simple. User role, type, and range are 3 different things that you could individually set. So you could study SELinux a lot more and be able to probably do the just do the -t and type in HTTP sys content _t and then the file name, and it would make the change. But I'm going to fix the entire thing at once. So do the chcon. I'm going to right click to paste the string that was on the 404 HTML file. I'm going to use a space bar and type the file name. I should change the context of that file. If I type in ls-Z, I should see that it's changed over. And I'm going to reload. and my browser displays the graphic file. Or in your case, the text file or whatever file that you had, if you run it now, it should fix it. Windows is doing something very similar to this. They got something called Smart Screen Filter. Have you heard of that? Smart Screen Filter, anybody? No? So Smart Screen Filter is an issue when you move or copy a file from a remote system or download a file. Sometimes, depending on the application you pull it from and where the file came from, it will block the file from running. So in Windows, I've had a few people pull some like PowerPoints and they couldn't open a PowerPoint. And that's because the Smart Screen Filter had a block on it. And if something is blocking the file from running because you pull it from an unknown location and the digital signature on the file does not match the public keys in Windows, can't decrypt the digital signature and verify that it came from a legitimate company, you might not be able to open the program, or you might not be able to install the program, and you might have to unblock it. So Windows is doing real similar stuff that Linux is doing with SE, the Security Enhanced Linux. So if I move the file from one spot to another, Windows might do the same thing. They might have user instead of HTTP or whatever's required to make the program run. And you might have to unblock it. That just changed the security context. Windows is pretty easy. They just got a checkbox to unblock. I'm sure you could do some stuff with PowerShell and look at it that way. But Linux, I know about the chcon. There's probably a graphical tool to manage SELinux somewhere. I've never done that. I've always used web servers that were running no graphical interface at all. So I've had to use the command to copy files and change the context of it over.
I got a little bit different result.
What'd you get?
I was able to get to the picture, even though it says that unconfined U object, whatever. I was able to get to it.
But did it say HTTPD in the third section? It says, see, my unconfined works for Halloween, but in the third one right here, that's the one that's allowing or not allowing. If yours has that, then it would allow it to go.
Yeah, that's what it says. HTTPD _ sys content _ T : SO or 0.
Did you copy it instead of moving it? Did you use CP instead of MD?
Don't recall.
And that would be the reason. If you copy it, if you copy the file, it will actually make the third octet there, I'll call it an octet, it's not an octet, the third field. It will change it to HTTPD. It'll inherit the SELinux of the folder. If you move it, moving the file moves everything, including the security context stamped on the file. So that's where our problem came in as we moved it. It was put into the home folder. The home folder is not a place where the HTTP server is set to run from. And the security enhanced policy for Nginx only has this HTTP folder here set up and the files inside of it for it to access. So that that prevents somebody from hacking the Nginx server and trying to use the process to access other files outside of the HTML folder. You got this new kernel level security added in there that locks you into this folder and the files in here that have this HTTPD sys content on it. So the Nginx is not able to access this Smith file down here because it's only supposed to be accessed from programs or from the user's home folder. Any application that's allowed to open files from a user's home folder would be able to open up the smith.png file, but daemons and stuff that are locked to providing content to the public, they have their own context and they can only open up files that are specified for them to open. Yeah, that's some extra cumbersome issues in a lot of labs. When you install a Linux machine, the first thing the lab has you do is turn off SELinux, disable that feature of the kernel. I don't like to disable security. And be like, install Windows and disable Windows Defender. Be your first step to do. You wouldn't want to do that. So I know that I don't think we covered this anywhere in the operating systems class. I do not believe. We may have, but I don't think we did. I think I reserved that for security class. What do you think system U means?
System user.
I bet it means the system user created the file. Let's read up on SELinux. The Geek Diary sounds like a good place to get info from. Some things you can do, there's a policy that's built into Linux that has what all the folders and stuff, what files, what context each of the files should have in all the folders. And we did this in operating systems class. We created a file. We did touch space /.auto relabel and rebooted the system so that it would automatically run through and go through the SELinux policy and relabel all of the context and all the files in the system. We did that. Well, let's go down here. So the context contains additional information such as the user, the role, the type, and the level of access. So let's read about the SELinux user. Linux users are mapped to SELinux users. Well, that makes a lot of sense. Basically, system here is mapped to the root account. Unconfined means it's not mapped to any particular user. It could be open to any user account. And then you have a role for role-based access control in the next octet, and the type attribute. Domain for processes, that's the third octet. Domain for processes, that means the Nginx process, the Nginx daemon, what domain, meaning what can it access? What files can it touch? So that's the third one. That's the one where we messed with HTTPD context there. Stop Nginx from accessing that file. So that was our key one. The others didn't really mess us up much, but it's this third one right here that stopped it. And the third one is optional information. I don't know what the difference between S and other ones are. I've not studied SELinux that in-depth detail. I just knew that third octet, or the third field. I keep calling it octet because they keep thinking of Cisco. So whole lot of articles on SELinux. If it starts getting in your way, or you start having issues with it, something you might want to research a little bit further. Could be part of your presentation even coming up, where you got Kali, like what's something inside of Kali that we've not used. Preferably it's a tool that we've dealt with, but you could do something like, you know, teach us more about the SELinux context. Okay, so the Smith file. I want to play with the chcon again. And it was the -T for type, wasn't it? Make sure I'm on the right track. Yeah, -T for type. Let's see if I can just change the type field by doing HTTP. You probably don't have another file in there, but I have the Smith file. I'm looking at this file. I wasn't able to access it, so we're going to do experiment here. So the chcon -T, I changed the type from user_home_T to HTTPD sys content T, and that worked. So kind of neat. If you didn't know SELinux existed, you can get these access denied errors and not have a clue what's going on in the background. And turning off SELinux is not preferred. It's not a preferred method either. Because then if somebody breaks the Nginx daemon, they can now jump outside of the folder or have access to all your files. They won't be locked to just the files that are labeled with HTTPD system info. Let me see if I can get to my Smith. And there's my Smith. Everybody like Mr. Smith? He's great. He's awesome. So let's look at what Paul did. He did the next part that I was wanting to do. I'm going to remove the DNS file. It's not on my system anymore. So I'm going to copy, instead of move the DNS file from my home folder. Uh-oh, I moved it last time. It doesn't exist anymore.
Should we remove ours too? Or do we just watch?
You can watch, if you want to, you can. So I had to refresh mine. I'm going to give you all time to just play here in a little bit. I want to show you this last little part. Then I want you to go ahead and practice on your own, move some files and try to access. Do it on your own. Maybe another file. Let me remove my DNS file over to the home folder. Okay, now I can copy. I couldn't copy before because I moved it and it didn't exist. So if I copy it and do an ls-z, I noticed that when I copied it, it's making a new file. When you copy something, it makes it a new file, and when it's putting it in the folder, it's used inheritance when you copied it. So it allowed inheritance to take effect, and it inherited not only the user, the root permission, it also inherited the context. So I copied it, read the owner of the HTML directory, it read the context of that directory, and it placed it on the file and it was copied in there. But when you moving doesn't create a file. The file already has permissions. It already has a user and owner. It already has a context. All of that gets moved with it into the folder. So that's where we had our access denied error. Now that I've copied it, the only thing that's different from the other files is it's unconfined because it wasn't created by the operating system, the system_u. It was created by regular people, but that file will still load up on my web browser. It's right now only that third field is what blocked me before. So there's where that you can be really, really confused if you've not messed with SELinux. You move files and you copy the files, and then you're confused. You're thinking, well, I did the exact same thing with this file as I did the other file, but I can't access this one file because you forgot that you moved versus copied. You know, that can be really, really disheartening or something. I don't know what you all want to say, but it can hurt your pride thinking I'm a great IT person and why will the system not let me access this file? All because you did something different from a copy versus a move and not knowing SELinux existed.